Leslie.
Hi, Fran. How are you?
I'm pretty good today. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well as well. Thank you.
So, what everybody doesn't know watching this is we've had about 5,000 technical problems getting set up to do this recording, but we're hoping that we're there.
Right.
And so we're going to have a conversation. So, what is this conversation about?
Oh, I feel the weight of the world on me right now. So, LifeSpring's been through quite a bit of transitions in recent years, and your faith has taken on some new dimensions, and there have been quite a few new people who've come through the doors of our church. But for many people at LifeSpring, what they see with you, what they see for Fran Lehman, is somebody who's preaching a sermon or who's having conversations with somebody up front, and they don't necessarily get to see what you're thinking about or what you're doing with certain things. And so we kind of thought that it would be an interesting conversation today if you and I chatted about some of the things that are rolling around with you to kind of kick off our summer conversations and kind of do a check-in.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? You know, you've had a really tough start of your year. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. This, as people have heard me say, because I've talked about it in my preaching, this has been beginning of a year, a first half of a year, like I've never experienced before in my life. With losing my mom, which was expected, but then losing my little brother Richard right about the same time. It was devastating. We were super close, and I think I've never been so wrecked in my life, and I've had a couple times I've been pretty wrecked in my life, but I think I've never been so wrecked in my life. So just that deep sadness and grief, and as we all have to or try to, I'm working through that. And for me, because I'm a person of faith, because of the place of God in my life, it's been I've been processing it that way, right? Deepest pain, I talked about this in my sermon last week, like deepest pain, like where are you, God, and what does it mean? And what I've really been coming to terms with, and I've been talking about this in conversation with so many people, is it seems a little odd to be at the age that I'm at, and I really feel like I'm, for the first time, kind of coming to terms with the reality that nobody gets off the stage of this life without a whole bunch of loss, without about a whole bunch of pain. That's going to vary for different people, right? It's going to come in different sizes and shapes. And so I've really been thinking through how I've been really wondering deeply about how the experience of loss and pain is something we're going to experience if we can see it right alongside beauty and joy as we journey through this life. And I think we tend to go through life kind of saying like, hey, I'm going to work really hard to avoid all the loss and pain so that I'm going to have mostly, the beauty and the joy. But points come where life says that's not your choice. And then the question is, and so, through that process, I saw so much love and so much beauty, so much goodness flowing among my family, and even in things with my little brother in the days before his death, that, as I've been saying to people, the day of Richard's funeral so far in my life is my most painful day I've ever experienced and my most beautiful day I've ever experienced. And I'm still finding myself saying, how does that work?
Yeah.
Like, how does that go together? But it does, because for a Christian, if it doesn't go together, our only choice is to construct some kind of Christianity that's really like a denial of pain and loss. Like, really, we have to have them both and say, okay, God, how do I walk through this? Because I don't just want to experience the loss and the pain.
Right.
I want to continue to see the beauty and the joy. But what the loss and the pain does to us is it threatens to eclipse that. So can you see it all? And I think in this journey with God, there is a way to see it all. But anyway, that's a long answer to your question. How am I doing? And I know, and actually, in our church community, tons of people have lost people in this last 6 months to a year. And so I know that others in our, I don't mean to be self-absorbed, others in our community are walking through such tough things and such tough losses and really crazy health battles. And, you know, I think if I were to say something about that, I would say we have to find God in the midst of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that was a good answer, and I might circle back to that just so
Yeah.
you know.
Well, we'll see.
But what are you thinking about these days?
Ah, gosh. And I, you know, full disclosure, I knew you were going to ask me these questions. And so I thought about, you know, what am I really stopped and, you know, this week said, what am I thinking about these days? One thing I'm thinking about is a lot these days is how grateful I am to have settled into this Jesus-centered theology in my life that we've been journeying into for years now.
Right.
You know, in theological terms, we call it a Christocentric theology that says this isn't just about having a Bible verse for something. It's not just about hanging on to what we've necessarily been taught, but it's going back to the Jesus we find in the Gospels and say, his teaching, his ethic, his heart, his way with people, does the theology of my journey with God look like that? Does it resonate with what we see in Jesus? And I'm just super grateful. That has been, I spent decades before that listening to Christians and different people espousing different theologies saying, well, it's this, or it's more like this, or it's this, you know. And now I have this baseline. I go sit at the feet of Jesus and I say, does this walk like Jesus, talk like Jesus, sound like Jesus, dance like Jesus, you know? So I'm thinking a lot about that. And for me, that's a settled thing now. It's settled. I just have gratitude for it. Like, oh, it's a good way to navigate, right? The questions of what our faith is about and how to walk it. I'm also thinking a lot about humanity in light of kind of the history of Western Christianity, which most of us know as Roman Catholicism and then the Protestantism that grew out of the Reformation in Western Europe. The difference kind of in how humanity is thought of in Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity, which developed in the Eastern Empire, which today would be mostly Turkey. And they really developed very, very differently. Western Christianity took on a very legal tone, so the question always, and you can see it in the history of like medieval Catholicism right through the Reformation, Western Christianity became this thing of like, how do we get acquitted with God? How do we get right with God? Mostly like so that we can get into heaven, right?
That bargaining.
Yes. In Eastern Christianity, Christianity was thought of as much more, the word we might use today is like therapeutic, having to do with like what's happening to you as a person, and much more about participating in the divine, that we're entering into this mystical communion with God that's going to help us become as human beings. And so those aren't, you can't draw those lines too strictly between West and East. But we've been obsessed with sort of the, you know, that more juridical, how do we get right with God kind of thing, right up through modern evangelicalism. But then you go back to the Jesus of the Gospels, right? And he's talking about what you're becoming all the way from the heart deep down, all the way to then the fruit that that journey, that transformation bears in your life. So I'm thinking a lot about that, and I lean heavily in that more Eastern direction, which if people know about, you know, I would say in the West, the people who leaned in that direction, Franciscans, even though they were in the West. Today we would look at people like Richard Rohr and Bradley Jersak and others who are writing about the gospel being about the restoration of our humanity. So I think about these things a lot, not only because I want my own humanity restored, but I'm a pastor.
Right.
So I'm looking out at the people that God has gathered with us, and I'm saying, what is this journey that the Lord really has for them, and how can I or how can we help people take that? And so, that's a big deal. And I don't know, I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. I'm thinking these days about how much people matter. Like, True Confessions, when we started this church 30 some years ago, I just wanted to be a successful young pastor growing a church. People were in some ways kind of a means to an end. That's a terrible thing to have to confess, but just wanted the church to grow and whatever. Now I'm just so transfixed by people and their journeys. And when they come through our doors at LifeSpring or they come into my life, I'm right away wondering, what has your journey been? How have you been wounded? What is it you long for? Who is God to you? What images about God have kind of floated down to your life? And how are those good or messed up?
Right.
So I'm thinking a lot about people and their journeys. I'm thinking a lot about worship these days, actually, and Linda and I are going to have a conversation up front at church about worship that I think is going to be really interesting. And then I would say, lastly, I'm thinking a lot about where Christianity is headed in Western culture as we see multiple Christianities developing.
Okay.
In our time. It raises huge questions. If someone says to me, what's Christianity going to look like in the West or in America in 50 years? My first answer is, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to kind of connect to that, excuse me, I've heard you say that this is the most unique time that you've ever experienced as a pastor. So why is that, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, gosh, I crazy most unique time. I have this joke I tell people where I say, I thought by this stage of my pastoral life or pastoral career that I would be trying to figure out how to keep it interesting, and then I always pause and I look at people and I go, oh, it's interesting. And it's so interesting because it's such a unique time to be a Christian. We have all these cultural issues swirling around us, and Christians do not agree about them. There are Christians over here and Christians here and Christians here, and alongside that, we do have these sort of multiple Christianities that are developing, in our culture, and we are really witnessing. This is going to sound to some people, we're witnessing the end of Christian America. And what I mean by that is, kind of went through the 1950s, most people went to church, and it was almost like a cultural thing, right? Of course I had a guy say to me one time, I said, are you a Christian? He said, well, of course I am. I'm American, So there's kind of that mentality, right? 1950s. And then the church has gone through different upheavals. We've had the big seeker church movement with Willow Creek and all the big, and we said, wow, these churches are growing like crazy. Everybody in America will be a Christian pretty soon, right? Mm-hmm. Which if you look today, you go, yeah, no. Because the church is shrinking in our culture, right? And so there's all these questions about, well, what is Christianity? What is the gospel? What is the church supposed to be about? And when, the only way, so the church is in decline in our culture. You have these different Christianities developing, and one of those is kind of a strain, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, right? You can never chop things up to whatever perfectly. People are in all kinds of places, is what I'm saying. But we're kind of in that strain of Christianity in America that's developing that says, oh, we have to have Christ, the Jesus of the Gospels, back in the center of this thing. And it is about the journey that our hearts are taking, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way, so I'm excited that there's a little bit of that bubbling in Western culture in America, although it's a small part of the church. The lion's share of the church is still in the mode of what the ethicist David Gushee calls authoritarian reactionary Christianity. So that's what we see with MAGA Christianity, the Christianity that has kind of married one political side. And the only way America continues to look like an overall Christian country is if authoritarian reactionary Christianity succeeds and kind of takes the reins of government power, at which point it will not be Christian anymore. because our faith is not centered in dominating power. So that's a really, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that will succeed that way, though there are lots of people who bear the name of Christ in our culture that's what they're hoping for, is kind of to take over government power and for Christians to run everything. That will go bad as Christian nationalism has gone bad every other time in every other country that it's been tried in history. But assuming that doesn't succeed, for lack of a better phrase, assuming that doesn't succeed, then you're eventually going to see that Christianity, it's going to look like Christianity's influence is waning and waning in American culture. And you say, well, boy, that's a terrible prophetic word, Pastor Fran. Aren't you depressed about that? In one sense, but through all this kind of shaking up that's happening, there is this stream of Christians that are saying, I think we missed some steps, and we got to recenter this thing in Christ. And what Christ talks about is the transformation of the person. He talks about becoming people of love, right? So that part is exciting to me. Like, I'm out in the community a lot, and I talk with people who aren't Christians, who maybe they had a little church when they gave up on church years ago. And when I talk to them about what's in the center of my faith, becoming a new person, becoming a person of love, things, they want to talk to me more about it. I think that's the Christianity that's going to have appeal. Whereas the most visible form of Christianity right now in our culture is kind of what Gushee calls this authoritarian reactionary Christianity. That Christianity, the culture is looking at and saying, yeah, I don't want that. Nobody wants it. I don't want it. So, it's an interesting time to be a pastor when you have multiple Christianities. I have people ask me all the time, what kind of Christianity are we talking about here? And I see, how can I say this? I see my evolution over the last decade in my theology and getting Christ back in the center and getting love in its supreme place as it should be, seeing God big and beautiful again. I see the evolution in my faith and in our church's faith as being, it reminds me of that line in the book of Esther, who knows but that you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Like, this is the faith that's needed. This Christ-centered, love is supreme, big, beautiful God. This is the faith that's needed for the time and place we're in our culture right now. It's the only faith that's attractive. It's the only faith that's compelling to people. And so I feel like we took this journey as a church, and we didn't know why. We were just trying to wrestle with a bunch of questions. And then as we kind of came into this place of seeing things differently, it seemed like the culture exploded with people going, can I say it this way? Like, oh my God, is there a better Christianity anywhere to find? And in our little area here in Plainfield, Illinois, we were like, yes. And I see that as a God thing. All the timing of that is a crazy God thing. I couldn't have planned it if I'd wanted to, So I don't know. I sometimes wonder. I do wonder this, in this unique time of being a pastor, this unique time of what our church is. I sometimes wonder, do LifeSpring people, and I'm sure the answer to this is a lot do and maybe some don't, but I think, do LifeSpring people have a grasp of what's been carved out here in this?
I think a lot of them.
You think a lot of them do?
Yes.
Like how unique it is? Because it's unique.
It is unique.
And we have people who, and I'm not tooting our own horn, LifeSpring has a million flaws and we're always trying to figure out how to do things better. But we do have people walking all the time through our door, and after they experience LifeSpring a little bit, they'll say to me, this doesn't exist out there. And I know that probably sounds arrogant for me to say that, but it's not meant that way.
Because I hear the same thing from people.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something to be said for offering what's not available to other people.
Yeah.
So let me circle back a little bit, because something that you said when you talked about the transformation and becoming more Jesus-centered, and that the change of heart, basically, I'm going to just call it that, the change of heart, and putting that into what your faith is, the change of heart. What do you say to people who say, yeah, but, because a lot of us were raised to have a fear over if we are not, and it's hard to break this. It's hard to break this, and this is why I'm asking you this question. People who have the fear of, if I don't hold that line, if I don't judge other people, then I am in trouble. I am going to be in peril. I'm going to stand at that judgment day, and I have to answer to not speaking to those things.
Right.
How would you answer that?
Well, I think we have two fears of judgment. One is, am I going to be under judgment because I'm so bad personally, right? Whether you were raised in a liturgical church where, it was kind of, here's the list of sins and you go to confession or whatever you do and you try to be good enough, or like Linda and I, coming out of that, being raised in a more liturgical tradition, and then coming into in a more traditional kind of thing, and then coming into Bible preaching type churches where it was kind of a different version of the same thing, which was, here's all the things good Christians do, and here's all the things they don't do, and how are you doing with that? Because
Right.
God's really unhappy when you're, So I take the question of sin like super, super seriously, but we should, this goes back to that Eastern church thing, right? Is the question, is sin a problem because it puts me under judgment and I'm not going to get into heaven? Or is sin a problem because it's an erosion of the glorious and good humanity I was made for? The real answer is the latter, And so, but yes, you're right, because we're afraid of being in trouble. I talked about this at this thing we did Friday night, this verse, and I think it's 1 John 4:18. Man, there's just a handful of those passages of Scripture that you just go like, man, burn this into us, Lord. John says, the one who fears has not yet been completed in love. And in context, he's talking about fear of God. Not like the Psalms and Proverbs talk about it, where you respect, hey, you're the creator, I'm the creature, but like terror of God, like you're talking about. So they're like, oh, God's mostly a big judge and I'm going to be in trouble, right? And John says the person who thinks that way about God has not yet been completed in love. And then he says this, because fear has to do with punishment, right? It's that fear that this is God's primary thing, is about, punishing us for our sin. And then we extend it out into the judgment to other people, right? And we do some of that because it makes us feel better. Like if I think you're worse than me, then when I judge you, I kind of am saying to myself, like, I think I'm more okay, right?
Like
Right, yeah. We also do it, though, because we're afraid, and there's a lot of this out there today, we're afraid that God's going to judge us for what we approve, if we approve the wrong things. So this is where we end up, well, a lot of it's political too, but this is where we end up with these big-name preachers saying, this has literally been preached over and over across the years, like hurricanes have hit America or earthquakes because we aren't judging gay people enough. We're too tolerant of gay people in America, and so that's why God is sending lightning bolts on our country and destroy our country and blah, 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 blah. And so there's this whole thing of like, oh my, so then we're really paranoid, like we just almost can't approve of, everybody's a sinner, we almost can't approve of anybody, Right. And I think one thing I want to say about that is when we look at Jesus, again, back to Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus paints this view of God as so generous, as so having our good in mind. And the simplest metaphor for that, I think, right? Jesus, this messes up some people, but Jesus calls God the Father. God is a good parent. So what does a good parent want? Is he out to I'm going to lightning bolt my kid every time No. A good parent is trying to raise a healthy child who can have a good and joyful life. So they love their child unconditionally. Yes, they correct their child. Yes, they steer their child. They teach their child. But there's none of this intent of There's none of this. If a child's walking around crazy afraid of the wrath of his parent, that's not a healthy family. That's not a healthy family. And God is a good parent. And so, we talk about this all the time in the LifeSpring community. The real freedom in the Christian journey begins when you begin to believe that you are the beloved of God, that you're the apple of God's eye, that is God's big way of looking at you and seeing you, that when he looks at you, he smiles, that he's pleased with what he made. And you say, well, yeah, but what if we're messed up? Well, we are all messed up. We're works in progress, And some of us, and maybe it's sometimes in our life, we were super messed up, and God was working in our lives to get us out of that. But when God looks at us, he's crazy about me the way I'm crazy about Luke and Joanna, my kids.
Yep.
Same thing. But that's a big shift. When you come from a religious isn't that crazy? But when you come from a religious background that talks about Jesus all the time, usually that is it's not native to your faith.
Right.
And you have to go through a process. And again, if anybody, whoever's watching this, go read Henry Nouwen's Life of the Beloved. Go read it, go read it, go read it. So.
Okay, can I circle back? Do we have time for me to circle back?
Yeah,
to
we do.
else?
We're doing okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry to go back to this, but when you talked about the losses that you experienced at the beginning of this year, and how you were able to see the joy and the beauty as you also experienced the heartache and the pain. For people who don't know how to get to that place, what suggestions would you give?
That's a great question. And I don't think there's a 1, 2, 3 formula kind of answer to it. Or a, hey, go read this Bible verse and that'll just sort it out for you. I think that here's one thing I know. Well, first of all, I think you have to believe. There's a verse in Hebrews that says, whoever comes to him must believe that he is and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. Like, you have to have some basic belief or strong hope, right? That this God of goodness and beauty is there. And what I have learned, and it's counterintuitive to us. I've learned it in smaller ways on the Christian journey. I'm learning it with this big thing of the pain and the beauty, walking down the road together in your life, right? Coexisting in your life. And that is that you don't get there by working up enough faith, which is actually good news, because a lot of us have been taught a lot of things about faith that say, man, if you just work hard enough, you believe enough, if you just, I have a charismatic background. We were like, Lord, we're just gonna believe enough and it's all gonna make it happen. That's not actually how you get to this place of seeing what I'm talking about. You get there by surrendering to the fact that there's actually no other option. And that's what this deep pain of losing Rich did to me. Was all I could do was say, oh my God, Lord, where are you? Where is your goodness? I think of that verse that says, I know that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, not just later, right? And Lord, where are you in this? And I was so without strength to have enough faith. Right? That's good news, right? I was so without strength to have enough faith or to whip it up or to convince myself of some, I'm going to convince myself, the beauty and the goodness is still there. And I felt like I just, somewhere in there, somewhere between Rich's death and his funeral, a week or two later, I just let go. I just let go. And I fell into the ocean. And I've heard people say this all my life. When you let go, you find that God will catch you. If you believe to some extent God is there and you're looking in that direction, you find that God will catch you. Our fear is, I'm going to let go and I'm going to fall into a pit and I'm never going to get out. I don't know. That's definitely not a complete answer to that question. I wanted to circle back to something.
Okay.
And we probably have just not too much longer here. You asked me what it was like to be a pastor these days. One of the really interesting things that's been an adjustment for me I like easy pastoring, just like everybody likes their job to be easy, right? I like easy pastoring. I've had to get used to, like, just when I think I won't have to have more of these conversations, which is really dumb on my part, I'm continually, or fairly often, in a variety of settings, having to defend or explain, for example, why I've chosen to be an affirming Christian when it comes to our LGBTQ siblings. And I actually kind of like those conversations once I get into them, but they often start with somebody basically telling me that I've abandoned the faith, that I've walked away from Jesus because I, love gay people and trans people, right? And once I get into those conversations, believe me, I'm comfortable in those conversations because we had time now, I could walk you through all my reasons why I'm an affirming Christian, and they're good reasons, and I'll never go back. I'll never, ever go back. But I've had to get used to that. I've had to get used to people, including pastor friends, like not wanting to be my friend anymore, basically walking away from our friendship because they think I've become some kind of a heretic. But anybody who actually knows me knows that I love Jesus maybe more than ever, that I love the Scripture probably more than ever. But that's been an adjustment to basically realize that my opinions as a pastor were not, people didn't see them as divisive before, and so there's a sadness that comes with that, but there's also a part of me that's like, I'm chasing that Christ-centered view. I'm chasing Jesus in all this. And when I have those moments where I say, Lord, this is hard. Lord, am I on the right path here? I always hear the Spirit of God saying, keep on coming, keep on coming, keep on coming. Love is supreme. I'm about people's hearts. I'm about restoring people. Keep loving people. Keep inviting everybody in. Keep inviting everybody to the table of God.
Yeah.
But it's different. Yeah. So.
All right. So I know we're almost out of time. So, and I'm not sure, is this going to be my last question? Probably.
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. I'll joke like you usually do. We'll just order in lunch and everybody can stay.
There you go. There you go. Right.
So what do you, Fran Lehman, as a person, at this point in your life?
I want everything to be easy.
You just said you didn't want it to be easy.
I want everything to be easy. This is going to sound so goofy. I want to be a good man. When I was younger, I was really focused on what people thought of me. I want to be a good man down to my bones. And I'm always going to be a flawed man, right? We all are. But when my time comes, I want people to say, he was a good man. He worked hard to grow into being a good man. I want that. And the other thing I would have to say is, I really desire family connectedness at this point. I got a lot of that when I was out in California around my mom's and brother's funeral, with my siblings, with extended family. My brother Rich, his wife, now widow, and their kids. And I don't know if that's part of getting older, that I'm valuing that more. It might be, and also then just getting this bigger taste of it. But even now that I'm back here and my family's in California, we're communicating 10 times as much as we used to, and it's good for my soul. Yeah.
So that was some more of your personal things that you desire.
Yeah.
What do you dream of for this church community?
I dream of this community staying the course. We have chosen paths that are very different from where we once were. We've always been a church with a good heart. We've done great things, you look at the way we've loved people as a church, what we've done down in Haiti, all these things. But we have chosen different paths as a church. Like I said, this Christ-centered place, refusing political allegiances, the supremacy of love, big, beautiful God. These are our theological things, right? And I long for this church to stay the course, to never shut our eyes to the beauty and goodness we have seen. And I long for this church just to have lots of connectedness and joy. We're working hopefully on starting a couple more new small groups. I want people to find the life here. Life is hard, up and down, but we're on this journey with Christ. I want people to find the things that are really helpful to that journey in our church community. And then the other thing I would say about what I want for our church is, this isn't really what I want for our church, it's just something I'm going to say. There is a sense in which, now I'm going to offend everybody my age, there's a sense in which the most important people in this church are the people under 40 years old, right?
Oh, you got me on that one too.
I know, well, yeah. Wait, you're not under 40?
No.
But I say that because they're the future of this church community.
Right.
And our culture needs church communities like what LifeSpring has become, and LifeSpring will be this crazy, beautiful church in a strong way in another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, not because you and I are still steering the ship and serving and loving this community, but because the people who are coming into our church who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s are doing that and taking it, they see it, and they say, man, we're going to do this, and we're going to keep this thing following Jesus. Yeah. We're going to keep going. Yeah.
So last question. So to the person who, despite all of the confusion and all the conflicting messages that are being fed to them in their everyday lives from the culture, from different voices, but to the person who hears all of these things and says, yes, I want to follow Jesus and take that really good spiritual journey, that heart journey, but they're having trouble figuring it out because of all of the voices, what do you say to them?
Beauty and goodness, beauty and goodness. Beauty and goodness is what I say. And if the religious people around you, or if somebody's listening to this who doesn't attend our church, right? If the religious people around you or the religious community, the faith community you're a part of, if they make God and people small, run. Yeah. Run. We have to be done with that. We have to be done with that. We have to see ourselves and God and other human beings the way we see Jesus doing that. In the Gospels, and so that's a huge deal. Is that will help you sort out half of it right there. And then I would say, remember that it's a journey, not a sprint. We sometimes get frustrated with ourselves. If you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to be growing on this Christian journey. If you're 30. And people now are living longer, and you're going to live to be 90. You got 60 years on this journey, so don't get too discouraged. It's a journey, not a sprint. Right. And if you keep your eyes on Him and in the right places, you're going to take an amazing journey. You will become an amazing human being. That is possible, and it will touch other lives, which is a huge part of what the Lord wants for us to bear that fruit, out of our lives. And I would just say, because I think because of some of the ways my faith has changed or our church has changed. People love these terms like conservative and liberal, or they talk about progressive Christianity. People could look at me and they could say, oh, you're going this way or you're going this way. I'll tell you a way I'm super conservative. I'm such a Holy Spirit guy. I believe in the presence of God in my life, in your life, in the lives of everybody who is open and following. So I would say to people, God is going to be with you all the way. Mm-hmm. Healing your heart. You got wounds. He's been healing me across these years. Healing your heart, awakening you, teaching you, changing how you see, bringing you joy. Like God is alive and real, and He's alive and real in you. Mm-hmm. And so keep on trucking. Go.
Hard,
yeah.
Keep on trucking.
Even when it gets hard. And it does. And it gets hard. That's one of the things I love about our communities. We're honest about that. Mm-hmm. It gets hard. And in the hard, we just have to remember, God is not a million miles away. God is here with us in the hard. We have to get used to thinking that way. Yeah. God is with us in the hard. And then He's going to bring us out the other side. And He always does. He never, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So
I know we have to wrap up.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to say, I think we need to continue this conversation at some point on the podcast.
Okay.
I do,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I think it's good.
we gotta start cranking out podcast episodes. So one of the things we've talked about is because I'm writing on Substack now, and I'm writing more like more serious length articles about topics, everything, culture, faith, life, all kinds of stuff. We're going to take some of those topics and chew on them, and we've touched on some of them today, and chew on those things together.
So you mean I have to Evelyn Wood speed read all of those?
Well, I don't know about that, but you can just, I don't know. But anyway, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
This was really a joy for me.
Thank you.